The saloon doors swung on broken hinges, groaning like old bones. Dry Lantern wasn't much of a town, just a strip of weathered boards clinging to a desert road that went nowhere worth remembering. Heat rolled off the sand like breath from a furnace, and the only shade came from the crooked awning above the saloon's porch. He came in slow, one arm tucked uselessly in his duster, the sleeve pinned flat. The other hand swung free, scarred and steady. Folks barely looked up at first, just another drifter, lean and worn down by sun. But then the bandits noticed. There were 6 of them, lounging across 2 tables with whiskey dripping from their jaws. Their leader, a broad man with yellow teeth and a red scarf tied cocky around his neck, grinned when he saw the stranger. "Well now," Red Scarf drawled. "Looks like the desert coughed up half a man. Sit, boys. Give him room to order himself a pity drink." The stranger ignored him. He walked to the bar, boots crunching on sawdust, and laid down 2 coins. "Water," he said quietly. His voice carried, flat as a gunshot in the silence. The barkeep hesitated, eyes flicking nervously between the bandits and the drifter. He poured the glass anyway. Behind him, laughter rose. "Water?" one of the bandits hooted. "Man's got 1 arm and no taste." Another bandit, skinny, twitchy, always eager to please the leader, stood and swaggered toward the bar. He tipped his hat forward, leaned close. "How'd it happen, stranger? Snake bite? Cannon shot? Or maybe you was born unlucky?" The drifter didn't move. He lifted the water to his lips, drank slow. That silence worked like a match on kindling. Red Scarf slammed his fist on the table. "Answer him, 1 arm." The drifter set the glass down gently, turned his head just enough for them to see his eyes. They weren't angry, weren't afraid either, just still. Still in a way that made the room colder despite the desert heat. "I keep my answers," he said softly, "for men who ask honest." The words hung in the air. The skinny bandit laughed, but it cracked around the edges. "You calling me a liar?" "You're calling yourself one," the drifter replied, and finally shifted just enough that the whole room saw the way his coat fell open. At his hip, tied crosswise, was a revolver, modified. The handle carved strange, tilted forward, made for a draw unlike any the town had ever seen. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Red Scarf stood, shoving his chair back with a screech. "You got 1 hand, stranger. We got 12. Let's see if your mouth can outdraw that crippled body." The barkeep muttered a curse under his breath. He'd seen dead men talk before. The drifter turned back to the bar, picked up his glass, drank the last of the water. Then he spoke, quiet as ever. 12 won't be enough." The saloon froze. Red Scarf's grin faltered, then hardened. He flicked 2 fingers. The skinny bandit reached for his pistol, fast, reckless. The drifter moved faster, no flourish, no wasted motion. His good hand blurred, the revolver clearing leather with a twist that seemed impossible for 1 arm. The gun bucked once. The skinny bandit's pistol clattered to the floor as he screamed, clutching a shattered wrist. Smoke curled from the drifter's barrel. No one laughed now. The drifter holstered as quick as he'd drawn, like lightning tamed. His voice cut through the silence. "Next man draws loses more than his hand." For the first time, doubt flickered in Red Scarf's eyes. The stranger hadn't stood, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't even looked winded. And yet half the room believed him capable of killing them all before the smoke cleared. Red Scarf forced a laugh, but it didn't carry far. "You think you're something, don't you? Well, you ain't met the rest of my boys yet. They'll want to see what kind of freak limps into our town thinking he's whole. The drifter slid his empty glass across the bar. It clinked sharp against wood. Then let them look. The bandits shifted uneasy. Red Scarf barked at them to move, to laugh, to shake it off. But the damage was done. Every man in the room had seen it, the speed, the control, the way one arm had been enough. The drifter turned and walked out into the sun without another word. On the street, heat shimmered, dust rising around his boots. Behind him, whispers started. Not just about a cripple anymore, about something else, something worse. Red Scarf watched him go, bile burning in his gut. He leaned close to his men, voice low, venomous. Find out his name. Find out his story. Nobody makes me bleed respect in my own town. Inside, the barkeep wiped the bar with shaking hands. He knew a tale when it began, and this one smelled of blood and legend. The one-armed stranger walked slow, steady, toward the far end of town. And for the first time, Dry Lantern began to wonder if it was watching history walk by. By morning, the desert wind carried the whispers. The drifter with one arm, the way his pistol had sung like lightning, the way he dropped a man without spilling more blood than needed. Dry Lantern was a place that fed on rumor the way cattle gnawed dry grass, and this rumor carried spice enough to choke a town. At the livery, 2 men talked over their bridles. Fastest I ever saw. Didn't even look like he tried. Hell, how fast can he be with one hand? Must have been luck. Luck don't split bone that clean. On the porch of the Mercantile, old folks spat tobacco and muttered, "He'll draw trouble." Always do, men like that? Or maybe he'll clean the place of Red Scarf's gang. But trouble had quicker legs than hope. By noon, Red Scarf's lieutenants strutted down Main Street. They weren't laughing. They carried the sting of shame like burrs under their skin. And shame for men like them only turned into one thing: violence. They grabbed a boy hauling water for the smithy, held him by the collar in the dust. "Tell us," one snarled. "That stranger, what's his name?" The boy stammered. I don't know." The lieutenant backhanded him, cruel and sharp. "Don't lie. He's yours to point out." The boy's mother rushed from the smithy, brandishing a hammer, but Red Scarf himself appeared, his scarf bright as fresh blood. He raised a hand, and the gang released the boy, shoving him hard to the ground. "We'll find our stranger another way," Red Scarf said smoothly. He leaned on his horse, watching the crowd gather. Man like that don't walk away from insult. He'll show. And when he does, we'll carve his story clean out of him. The stranger did show. Not from pride, but because the town had filled with attention that made every bootstep echo. He walked out from the shadow of the old church, coat swinging loose, revolver tied high across his ribs. "Looking for me?" he asked. Red Scarf grinned. So the half-man's got half a tongue. The drifter didn't rise to it. He looked at the boy still sprawled in the dirt. He walked past the bandits, bent, and offered his good hand to help the boy up. Then he turned back to Red Scarf, eyes steady. "You want my name?" he said, voice low but carrying. "It's Jonah Clay." The crowd stirred. A few gasps. The name ran like a shock through the older men. One even muttered, "Can't be." Jonah Clay, the name of a ghost, a legend of the war years. When soldiers swore there was a left-handed gun who drew faster than any cavalry captain alive. A man who'd ended battles before they started, who'd vanished after a massacre no one spoke of without crossing themselves. Red Scarf sneered, masking his unease. "Jonah Clay's dead." "Then consider me his ghost," Jonah said. The air cracked. Red Scarf spat. Ghosts bleed like men. Maybe you'll show us tonight. Boys, bring him to the saloon. Let's see if the deadliest gun alive still knows how to drink. They didn't move to touch him. Not yet. Fear is a leash, and even bandits feel its tug. Jonah walked himself, calm, letting the town see his face, letting the weight of his name press down. Inside the saloon, Red Scarf poured whiskey and slid it across the table. Jonah didn't touch it. "You think this name makes you untouchable?" Red Scarf asked. Jonah met his gaze. "No, just unforgettable." One of the lieutenants slammed a bottle against the bar, glass shattering. "He's bluffing, boss." One hand don't win against six. Jonah's revolver was on the table now, his hand resting easy on it. His voice stayed flat. "Try 6. See how many stand by the end." The barkeep swallowed hard. He knew if bullets sang in here again, blood would flood the floor. And Red Scarf knew it too. Which is why his grin turned sharp and ugly. "You want a game, Clay?" "Fine, but not tonight. Tomorrow, at high noon. You against me and mine." Jonah inclined his head once. "Noon, then." The gang left in a clatter of spurs and curses. The saloon emptied after them, townsfolk whispering, the boy's mother clutching her child close. Jonah stayed seated, the revolver still resting under his hand. For a long time he stared at the bottle of whiskey on the table. His jaw worked, his shoulders tight. Finally, he whispered to himself, "Not again." Then he holstered the gun, stood, and stepped back into the desert night. Behind him, the barkeep muttered to no one, "Lord help us." The ghosts come back to finish what he started. And somewhere out beyond the ridge, the church bell tolled once, low and hollow, as if warning the town that legends never return without a price. The night before noon had its own kind of weight. Dry Lantern usually curled quiet after sundown, lanterns dimmed, doors barred against coyotes and dust. But that night, the town didn't sleep. Windows glowed faint, curtains fluttered as eyes watched the street, waiting for the morning to bring either salvation or slaughter. Jonah Clay sat alone in the corner of the saloon. The barkeep hadn't asked him to leave. No one dared. A single lamp burned low on the bar, throwing shadows across the warped mirror. Jonah's revolver lay in front of him, oiled and gleaming. He cleaned it with care, each stroke methodical. One hand made the work slower, but not clumsier. Every motion was deliberate, like a prayer offered without words. The barkeep finally spoke, his voice raw with nerves. "Is it true? What they said about you in the war?" Jonah didn't look up. "Depends what they said. They said you stopped a charge at Bitter Ridge. Alone. Said you left 100 men lying where they stood." Jonah's jaw tightened. He set the cloth down. "They don't tell you about the 100 more who never should have been there in the first place." The barkeep swallowed, wished he hadn't asked. Jonah holstered the gun and pushed the chair back, boots thumping on warped planks. "Get some sleep," he told the man. "Tomorrow will be long enough without ghosts chasing your dreams." He stepped out into the street. Moonlight washed the town silver, the boards of the storefronts glowing like bones. At the far end, he saw figures moving, bandits posted, drunk on power. They thought they had the night to themselves, but Jonah didn't walk into their light. He slipped behind the church, where shadows pooled. That's when he heard it. A whimper, muffled, then a sharp command. Jonah crouched low, followed the sound to the back of the livery. A lantern burned there, and in its glow he saw the bandits had taken the boy from earlier, the water hauler. His wrists were tied, his cheeks swollen. Red Scarf's lieutenant leaned close, blade flashing. "You'll call him out," the man sneered. "You'll scream his name when the bell tolls. That'll drag him into the open." The boy shook his head stubbornly. "He already said he'd stand at noon. He don't need me." The lieutenant slapped him hard, raised the knife again. Jonah stepped out of the shadows. His revolver cleared leather before the man even registered movement. "Drop it," Jonah said. The knife clanged on the dirt. The lieutenant froze, sweat shining on his forehead. Jonah gestured with the gun. "Cut the ropes." Slow. The boy scrambled free, ran behind Jonah. The lieutenant backed away, eyes wide. Jonah lowered the gun an inch. "Go tell your boss. Every move you make, I'll see it before you do." The man bolted into the dark. Jonah holstered again, turned to the boy. "Go home. Stay inside tomorrow." "But—" Jonah crouched, his eyes hard, but not unkind. "This fight's mine, son. Don't let them make you bait again." The boy nodded, lip trembling, and ran into the night. Jonah stood alone under the windmill's creak, his heart a knot of fury and memory. The war had taught him this. Men who preyed on the weak always believed themselves safe until steel touched their own throats. He looked east, where the horizon held the faintest blush of dawn. His hand brushed the butt of the revolver, the scarred fingers remembering every fight, every death. When the sun rose, he would stand. And when the church bell tolled noon, Red Scarf's gang would learn what legend really meant. But the bell tolled early. It rang once, sharp and loud, slicing through the quiet. Then again. Jonah's head snapped up. The sound wasn't calling to God. It was calling to him. On the ridge above the town, shadows moved, more riders than before. Red Scarf wasn't waiting for noon. He was bringing the fight early, planning to catch the legend half asleep. Jonah's jaw tightened. He checked the cylinder of his revolver, snapped it shut. The town wasn't ready, the people still cowering in their homes. And he knew, with a chill deeper than desert night, that tomorrow's duel had already been broken. The war wasn't coming back, it was here. The bell's echo had not faded when hoofbeats thundered into Dry Lantern. Red Scarf's riders poured down the ridge like a flood, their yells sharp, their pistols spitting sparks into the night. The town, half asleep, woke screaming. Doors slammed, shutters clapped. A lantern toppled in the rush, spilling oil that ignited in a ribbon of flame across the street. Jonah Clay was already moving. He cut through the alleys, one hand firm on the revolver, his coat flaring behind him. He had learned long ago that numbers meant nothing if you controlled the ground. And the ground in Dry Lantern had plenty of shadows. The first rider came too close, firing wild. Jonah stepped from a doorway, his pistol flashing once. The horse screamed, rearing. The rider tumbled into the dust. Before the man could rise, Jonah's boot caught his jaw, sending him limp. Jonah ducked back into the dark as bullets chewed the wall where he'd stood. From the saloon's porch, Red Scarf barked orders. "Smoke him out. Light the buildings if you must. He don't leave here alive." Two lieutenants grabbed torches and sprinted for the livery. Jonah knew if they burned the horses, the town would starve before winter. He moved fast, his steps silent. The revolver leapt in his hand twice. Two torches fell, flames snuffed in dirt. The lieutenant spun, startled, but they were too slow. Jonah's third shot dropped one, and the other fled, cursing into the dark. Bullets screamed back. Jonah ducked behind the trough, splinters flying. His chest heaved, but his mind was ice. He counted the shots, 6, 7, 8, until the rhythm of reloading broke their fire. Then he rose, aimed, and fired once more. Another rider pitched sideways, his gun clattering on the boards. The townsfolk had begun to stir. The smith grabbed a hammer, the barkeep a shotgun pulled from beneath the bar. But they hesitated, watching Jonah move like smoke, his one hand bringing down men who had bullied the town for years. Whispers rose, even amid the gunfire. Maybe the stories are true. Maybe he really is the ghost from Bitter Ridge. Red Scarf snarled, his voice ripping through the din. He's only one man. Circle him, damn you. But his men were faltering. Jonah reloaded slow and deliberate, eyes never leaving the street. When his chamber snapped shut, he walked forward, each step measured. Bullets sought him, but he bent, pivoted, fired, and men fell. He wasted no motion, no round. Every shot was a lesson in inevitability. At the far end, Red Scarf drew his rifle and sighted. Jonah saw the gleam, rolled into the dirt as the shot cracked. The round shattered the church bell rope. The bell swung free, tolling a thunderous note that shook the town awake. Doors flew open. People poured out, farmers, shopkeepers, widows with pistols in hand. They had hidden long enough. Seeing Jonah stand firm against the tide, they found their own courage. Shots rang from windows, stones hurled from rooftops. Red Scarf's men staggered under the sudden storm of defiance. Still, Jonah knew it wasn't over. Red Scarf himself remained, fury burning in his eyes. He signaled his last 4 lieutenants, and they charged together, a knot of rage and desperation. Jonah holstered and drew in one fluid motion, firing faster than breath. One dropped, then another, but the third closed in, slashing with a knife. Jonah twisted, pain lancing his side as the blade grazed his ribs. He smashed his elbow into the man's throat, dropped him gasping. The last lieutenant grappled from behind, an arm crushing Jonah's chest. With one arm, Jonah couldn't pry him loose. The man growled, pressing harder, trying to snap bone. Jonah's boots kicked dust, his lungs burned. Then, in a move learned years ago on a battlefield, Jonah slammed his head back into the man's face. Cartilage cracked. The grip loosened. Jonah spun, drove his revolver barrel into the man's gut, and fired. The street went quiet, except for the hiss of dying flames. Jonah stood in the middle of it all, chest heaving, shirt dark with sweat and blood. The townsfolk stared, not at a cripple, not at a ghost, but at the deadliest man they had ever seen. Red Scarf's voice broke the silence. Tomorrow noon, Clay. You and me, no shadows, no tricks. In the street where all can watch. Or I'll burn every house you hide in. Jonah wiped the blood from his mouth, eyes never leaving him. Noon, then. Red Scarf swung onto his horse, his men broken and scattered. He spat into the dust. You won't live to hear that bell. Then he rode off, leaving the town trembling. The people closed in, murmuring thanks and fear alike. The barkeep whispered, "You saved us." Jonah shook his head. Not yet. Tomorrow decides. He holstered his revolver, turned toward the church bell still swaying, its echoes fading into dawn. He felt the old weight of Bitter Ridge pressing on his shoulders, the memory of 100 men lying still. Tomorrow would either redeem that ghost or bury it forever. And somewhere in the hills, Red Scarf's laugh carried, promising that the deadliest draw was yet to come. Noon came heavy. The sun blazed white over Dry Lantern, flattening every shadow into thin stripes beneath the porches. The whole town gathered, lining the street as if summoned by judgment itself. Children clutched mothers' skirts. Men who'd spent years ducking their heads now squinted into the glare, rifles tight in their fists but lowered. The air was brittle, stretched taut by the promise of blood. Jonah Clay stood alone at the center. His duster hung open, revolver tied crosswise at his ribs, the carved handle catching sunlight. His left sleeve, pinned and empty, brushed in the wind. He looked neither proud nor afraid. He looked like a man who'd carried this walk in his bones for years. From the far end, hoofbeats struck hard. Red Scarf rode in slow, his horse lathered, his men trailing few and broken. He swung down, rifle slung, revolver at his hip. His grin showed teeth gone yellow, but his eyes darted with the memory of the night before. Still, he raised his voice so all could hear. "Folks of Dry Lantern, your ghost walks no longer. Today I bury him for good. You'll all see he ain't but half a man." Jonah's reply was a whisper that carried anyway. Half a man's still enough. The crowd shivered. Harlan, the sheriff bought and bent, stepped forward, puffing up like a rooster. "This'll be settled clean. Noon draw, man to man. Winner walks. Loser's a lesson." His eyes flicked to Jonah, greedy for the ending he hoped would erase last night's humiliation. The bell at the church swung. Its toll rolled deep, shaking dust from rafters. Noon. Red Scarf's hand hovered, his body coiled. Jonah's stillness was uncanny. His chest rose slow, his eyes locked. The world narrowed to two men, and the span of dust between them. The draw came fast. Red Scarf yanked his iron, arm slashing. Jonah's good hand blurred like water spilled in sunlight. His revolver cleared, fired once, twice, each shot measured, clean. Red Scarf staggered, one round punching his shoulder, the other his thigh. He fell to a knee, gun half raised, fury twisting his face. "You ain't no ghost, you're just crippled luck." Jonah's voice cut flat. "No, I'm what men make when they think scars mean weakness." Red Scarf lunged, aiming wild. Jonah shifted, fired a third time. The shot struck true. Red Scarf toppled backward into the dust, scarf darkening, breath rattling out into silence. The town exhaled as one. Harlan cursed and reached for his pistol, but half the crowd leveled rifles on him. The smith spat at his boots. Law's done when it sells itself. Harlan froze, stripped of his badge by the eyes of his own people. Jonah stood over Red Scarf's body, revolver smoking. He looked down not with triumph, but with the sorrow of a man who had long ago grown tired of killing. He holstered slow, the movement final. The boy Jonah had saved pushed forward, eyes wide with awe. "Mr. Clay, you really are the deadliest." Jonah crouched, his voice gentle. "No, son. The deadliest thing is believing fear makes a man untouchable. Remember that." The crowd began to shift, hope stirring in place of terror. Red Scarf's gang was broken, the sheriff disgraced. For the first time in years, Dry Lantern felt the weight of its own spine. Jonah walked away from the center of town, boots steady, the pinned sleeve brushing his side. The bell tolled again, its echo chasing him down the road. He did not look back. For legends do not linger. They leave behind whispers, ashes, and the knowledge that sometimes one hand is enough to change the fate of many.